Hi, and welcome into the conclusion episode. Yes. I've spoken to a Mike Warnock from NSW Properties and NSW Commercial. Basically, Mike is a director of the real estate agency companies that deal with selling and leasing both commercial and industrial properties. Commercial, industrial, yeah. But I've figured out that Syma included the screwdriver that also works with batteries. I want to see what's inside of that while I'm speaking to yourself. Basically, this is most probably not recommended thing to do, just to say, do not disassemble lithium or any batteries for that matter. Basically, when I was speaking to Mike, he told me that yes, they do sometimes use a drone operators, or rather the function of a drone operator for an aerial shot of the property or house. In order to sell it or rent it, lease it, well, whatever you want to call it. And yes, this could be an option for someone to enter the market. Unfortunately, he said that the drone footage alone would be not enough, because usually that type of service is provided as a part of a complete pack that the operator provides. Main thing being the photography of the main building, if you want to call it that way. So basically, they have a photographer that's providing them the pictures of the property, and it also has an option when it is taking the shots of doing the drone footage. There's a drone, regardless of the capabilities of the drone, unless I'm providing the photography as well, it would be further difficult to find the clientele to use my options or to use myself as the service provider. On very specific occasions, they would call in on a drone operator in order to do a survey of a building, or a roof or a window or something like that, in places where you would need an access and it's otherwise inaccessible, or in order to access it first hand, you would require a crane or a whatchamacallit, them things that builders do around the buildings so they can access high places. Not sure what they're called, but them metal construction, so to say. So that's what you would need in order to get there, and this is where they also use help of someone with a drone. But again, this is rare to come by, and although a viable option, I would need something to show the guys on the screen straight away. Speaking of drone itself, as you could have noticed from the flight tests that we did, even with the help of Sasha Sparrow, the drone wasn't as stable as I would like it to be, and this is the main problem, because while this is why you don't have any footage. Speaking of which, I did have a couple of files, but in order to film, you have to press a film start button. This confirms it, then you press it again, it stops it. If you don't press it the second time and you land the drone and switch it off and whatnot, the video file will be corrupted. But before we get onto that, as I've said, I found that the in-phone controls were it was too sensitive, that's the word, and it proved very difficult to control a drone. However, if that's a slightly longer screw, if we abstract from that, I've noticed a few things while trying to operate this drone. Well, first of all, I want to say that unfortunately this drone will not be fit for purpose if we speak about this drone as a potential hassle starter, so to say. And basically, my main problem with this is that it's too finicky to control. But we now step into a second option where we can control it with just the controller itself. Now this, you might imagine, would be a very no-go option for quite a few people if they are thinking of starting a business or a hustle with a drone. I've noticed a few things, and I shall demonstrate them to you right now. Whenever this drone bumped into something, instead of do not switch on, instead of braking, he was folding his arms, if I can call them arms. So basically, instead of damaging the blades, the drone just folded itself. That led me on to thinking of another opportunity that could be achieved with this exact drone. In order not to damage something bigger, heavier, and it had some problems as well, but bigger, heavier, or more expensive, because this uses the very same controls as any other typical drone would have, but it's more difficult to control this one because this requires more attention and where it's going. You could, in theory, purchase this and learn how to fly this drone before actually operating a big, expensive machine. There are multiple ways of get this working for you rather than just spending money on something more expensive straight away. If you have a firm, a business that already does and provides such services, operating drones and aerial footage and stuff like that, what you can do is when you take on new staff, because I'm fairly confident that there is not too many certified schools, colleges or whatever that will train you to fly either of the drones. But if you're taking on staff and you've got a newcomer and it needs to find something to train on without giving him the more expensive options, this, within even the, indoors probably, I can actually explain the indoors and outdoors thing in a second. Basically, you would give this, your guy, to train on with this when it's bumping into stuff, suffering very minimal damage. That also applies to kids. Let's say you as a parent have something like this, whatever the other expensive drone, and your kids will be moaning around you constantly, most probably, because they wanna have some fun with this as well. Because regardless of the other options or functions of this drone, it is no less to fly than your any other drone. It is more fun to fly because it actually is able to control stuff, because I've had the experience of flying a random, I can't recall the name, but it was like 120 quid drone. It didn't fold. It was basically, we managed to fly it for like 3 minutes, and every single time it would just fly away somewhere regardless of the wind conditions, and it would not ever listen to any commands whatsoever. Whereas this one is actually controllable. Therefore, from one side you can train your staff or yourself before operating a heavier equipment or more expensive equipment, and from the other hand, if you are just a family member, if you've got kids and you've got more expensive machines and you want your kids to learn, you can basically limit your kid, physically limiting your kid, that doesn't sound right, but basically just say, do not lift it higher than a fence or whatever, and just fly around in here. If you fly too high, I will take it away from you. But basically, you fly around and bump into a few things and learn how to control this before you will operate the bigger machine. I've opened the shop and I've noticed something. Supposedly, this has an antenna in here. At least it has a Wi-Fi signal in here, so this lifts up and antenna. The interesting thing is, there's no leads connected to it. There's literally nothing connected to it. So this is a decoy, this is fake. I'm not sure what they went with this, because they do have the antennas in here. Because this is either a Bluetooth module or a Wi-Fi module, and I would imagine this being a Wi-Fi module having two antennas. I've also noticed that the main controller chip has its laminations wiped out. Usually manufacturers do that, so it is harder to copy their product. But I was promising to speak of the outdoors, indoors flying things, and why a more beefier battery from a more expensive product lasts only 15 minutes, where this quite possibly could last for up to 24 or 26, if I recall right from the manual. As you know from the part 1 where I compared them in voltage, basically an electric motor works in a way, I won't go too far into details, into technical stuff, but the more voltage you give it, the faster it spins. Obviously, the faster it spins, the more torque it generates, so basically it's able to lift itself more efficiently, and this is why this operating at 7.6 volts is unable to compete with wind, where DJI operating at 11.4 volts can. And this also explains the time in flight, because this runs the DJI faster, spinning blades faster, it drains itself out quicker, whereas this one, while the blades rotate at a slower speed, it uses less energy, and therefore it lasts longer with no wind conditions, be it outdoors or indoors, but it is unable to compete with wind. Another very important thing is to actually know what the legal limitations and restrictions and responsibilities are. Obviously you can Google within your region what's the required and stuff, but generally in the UK there is two things. This one requires numbering and license, whereas this one doesn't, and you wouldn't think that it would be like so, because this one's bigger than this, but it's not as simple as that. Any drone that's over 250 grams, that's 250 grams, is required to have a license and registration and whatnot, whereas this being below 250 grams, you're able to operate this as normal, no licensing or numbering required. And this is another plus to train your kids on, or trying your own capabilities as in drone flight. And this is roughly where I was actually trying to speak to a active industry professional who provides aerial footage services. And while Martin was his name, a guy he supposedly runs a business in Southport, he was very interested to take part in this project of mine and provide his opinion on a couple of questions regards the drone flights and the services he provides. But after sending an email, after ending the call and sending him an email, he never replied. So thank you, Martin, for something, I guess. Anyhow, let's move on. Yes, you can make money with drones, obviously, but this is like the very conclusion. But this is a training unit or a toy. Unfortunately, 190 quid, roughly 189.99 pounds, will get you a toy. Speaking of which, I did film, and the video looks alright. It does look like it's a 1080. But as I've said, I would personally use this as a toy or a training device if I need to train someone, and unfortunately, due to that single reason, I'm unable to proceed with exploring whether this would make me, with proceeding with the side hustle that I've intended this to be used for. So what I'm thinking is, as a conclusion to Syma, I've got a couple of things to say, because your manual does include a QR code to get the app. Unfortunately, when you actually scan the QR code, it takes you to a Chinese only website, which I'm sorry I don't speak, so I had to manually find your app. Furthermore, in order to market this to someone who would be able to use that, you'd need to work on the stability of the unit, and it needs to be flyable, not just without the app, but with the app, and it needs to be a fairly seamless connection and operations as well, because as it currently stands, I wouldn't be able to fly around the premises or fly within the premises accurately filming what's going on using this drone. So I'm not sure whether I'm or somebody like me would be an intended or target audience, if you will, but I think there will be much more potential into actually doing this as a training drone, because it has a quite good lifespan in the air once in the windless conditions. I would say go for that rather than making toys. Maybe that's just my little small 2 cents on the whole ongoing situation. But as I've said, if you want just a toy, this is one hell of a toy. I haven't seen a drone that's as close to a real one for what it's worth as this one, because when this was purchased, I think even currently this is over 400 quid or something, with bog standard completation and what's included. But as I've said, either to have some little fun, or to give your kids some fun, or even to start your business, this would not give you the option to actually film, but this would give you the option to learn and do not worry about destroying an expensive piece of equipment. Because even if the blades get damaged, while they shouldn't, because it will just fold, usually, as you've seen from the previous video, you've got the replacement blades, and also you've got 2 batteries. So that will be it for this episode, and this will also conclude this series of episodes, a total of 3, of exploring whether the Syma would be enough to start a hustle. Now, while these series are finished, it doesn't mean that there won't be any additional ones that I will try to explore and see for myself what would it take in order to get started into anything. And no, the photography business is not considered. Besides me holding a photography diploma, it's way too easy, it's way too oversaturated, and it's way too complicated at the very same time. But for the time being, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for me breaking stuff. Hopefully not, hopefully fixing.